boarded up doors, broken windows, and a hole in the heart of downtown Hutchinson, Kansas. This is the landmark, and saving it could be the first domino in a much bigger revival. This downtown gem hasn't had a tenant in over a decade, but despite its current abandonment, I believe that this building could be a shining example of historic restoration done right. And in cases like these, when the paint starts to peel and the ceilings start to sag, something else starts to crack too: our perspective. And right now, the landmark is at a crossroads. Some see an eyesore and something past its prime. And on top of that, Hutchinson has already lost a number of historic buildings, including the Atrium Hotel, the Sugar Mill, and St. Elizabeth's Mercy Hospital. And I'll touch more on those later, but this time, the story might be different because the landmark is still standing, and a growing amount of people want to give it a future because its history is a story all on its own. Before it was an apartment building, it was known as the Hotel Stamey, a state-of-the-art showpiece built during the Midwest oil boom. It was so grand, it even had its own stationery, once used by President Truman himself to write to his wife. Its elegance even caught the attention of Hollywood. Director Henry King brought his vision for Wait Till the Sun Shines Nellie to life right here. But no matter how rich the history, that alone won't stop the wrecking ball. Still, it's a vital piece of the puzzle, and that's why I'm here, to dig into the past, talk to the people who are fighting for its future, and ask how this building might spark a downtown revival, because across Hutchinson, places like Memorial Hall, Salt City College, and so many others might be on the chopping block if the landmark isn't saved soon. You can just feel the grandeur of this building the moment you drive in. It sits right on the edge of downtown Hutchinson, and what I love seeing already is there are a number of solid restoration projects happening nearby. But then you pull up to the landmark, and seeing it in this condition, it's tough. Everything is covered in dust, the light fixtures are rusted, and it felt like everyone passing by had just gotten used to seeing it like this. But as I mentioned, this kind of situation isn't unique, and I could rattle off examples from all over the Midwest. But standing here, I can tell that the bones are solid. And I've seen buildings in way worse shape get brought back to life, and the fact that there are other restoration wins nearby gives me hope. But it really comes down to one thing: how do the city leaders themselves view its historic buildings?
To welcome everybody to our city council meeting for December 21st, 2021.
And there was one particular meeting that caught my attention, where they were discussing a storm with 85-mile-an-hour winds that rolled through downtown in 2021.
The Landmark Hotel, we really didn't have any options there, and that was pretty well evidenced the next day after the storm when we went to remove the barricades and the glass and window frames, and items, had they hit pedestrians, would have or could have killed people.
And as much as I hated hearing them say the D word,
and if we do get to an impasse where we do have to pony up the money for demolition costs, I think we need to take it seriously.
demolition only seemed to be on the table as a last resort, which is the way it should be for most buildings of this stature. So in order to make sure that the last resort never becomes a reality, we've got to dive into the full story and how the landmark fits into Hutchinson's history. It's the first step because it builds the foundation for community support, helps make the case for tax credits, and most importantly, to inspire a developer to take on a project like this. So let's rewind and find out how the landmark, which was originally known as the Stamey, came to be. And if I'm going to look into the history, of course, I have to start with the local historical society. So I sat down with the director.
This was the original, one of the original restaurants ran there, and that is the space.
That is so cool. But before we could talk about the landmark, I needed to get a better idea of how the city came to be in the first place.
Kansas was entered into the Union in 1861, and about 10 years later is when C.C. Hutchinson came through.
As railroads stitched the country together, new towns sprang up across the Midwest, and Hutchinson was one of them, emerging alongside the Santa Fe Railroad in the early 1870s.
From there, the town started growing with the commerce of the tracks.
This connection transformed it into a vital shipping and trading center, especially for agricultural products like Turkey red wheat, which thrived in the region's fertile soil. And like so many towns in the American Midwest, Hutchinson was born from the rush for liquid gold, oil. But in 1887, while land speculator and South Hutchinson founder Ben Blanchard was drilling in hopes of striking it rich, he hit something entirely different, a vast underground ocean of salt. And these salt beds stretched beneath the city like a hidden world. And instead of just abandoning the site, Hutchinson embraced it. That discovery didn't just shift the economy, it defined it, earning the city a new nickname, Salt City. And of course, because this channel is all about cool abandoned places, I had to come see the abandoned mines for myself.
Now, if you're not hauling salt out of here, you're not making any money. So when you bring a machine down, you're going to reuse it until you can't anymore and leave it down here. What goes into the mine then stays in the mine.
The salt discovery was booming, and that's really what put Hutchinson on the map.
Workers and entrepreneurs flooded in, building infrastructure to keep pace with the rapidly expanding population. With newfound prosperity came a need for places that matched the city's rising status, places grand enough to impress visitors and accommodate the booming business.
So back here is my office, and right here on top, I have some Hotel Stamey keys.
Wow, that's too cool. The story of the landmark began in June of 1922 with Robert Glasscock, the idea man and principal investor. He launched the project with an ambitious $100,000 budget, which is worth a lot more today, and secured a 99-year lease on a prime corner, 5th Avenue and Main Street. That's where he envisioned a 5-story hotel. While the final name was still up for debate though, the project would move forward under the working title 5th Avenue Hotel. Glasscock then brought in W.E. Hulse & Co. to design a bold and elegant structure meant to be seen from miles away. It was supposed to be a statement, one that reflected Hutchinson's confidence in its booming future. He also partnered with C.W. Stamey and Charles Mackey of the Stamey-Mackey Construction Company to bring the vision to life. And any time that I'm looking into the history of a place, I like to look at the bigger picture. Who was shaping the city at the time, and why?
Mr. Stamey also did build a beautiful high school brick building.
So I went back to the landmark, and I met with Jim Seitnader,
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. Yeah.
Hutchinson's Downtown Development and Main Street Executive Director, and Brenda Spencer, a historic preservation consultant.
There's a piece of the transom glass,
What is it?
prism glass that goes in the transom openings.
To better understand what this building meant and what it will take to save it.
People all saw this building and said, wow, what a rich piece of architecture, and you've got to save that building.
And that's when Jim and Brenda brought up something that made this building even more significant.
Now, the high school's torn down, right?
It is.
Yes.
And I think he built a lot of the earlier elementary schools and things like
houses,
that, which have all come down and then been replaced in the 60s, but
So
yeah,
this is one of the last remaining buildings that they did?
that I'm aware of.
And the investors wanted that legacy recognized, because when construction started, they were determined to open by April 1st. And the crew pushed through a brutal winter to make it happen. A rotating 40-man team worked around the clock, keeping over 30 fires burning just to fight off the cold. And when it came time to pour the concrete, they even added salt to the mix. And you know they had plenty of that because of Salt City.
You can see some of our Kerry salt shakers here.
Wow.
I really love the popcorn salt one. It's so colorful.
And that kind of grit didn't go unnoticed, because after much deliberation, they decided to name the hotel after C.W. Stamey himself, a tribute to the man, his company, and the sheer determination it took to build this place. And as I soon learned, that was just the beginning of the story, because when it finally opened, the whole town took notice. The opening of Hotel Stamey was treated like a citywide event. The newspaper devoted an entire page to it, every column, every ad, every inch. It read more like an announcement of a new president than a hotel opening. And back then, things were different. Travelers were used to hotels offering a small sink in the room and sharing a bathroom down the hall. But this place was jam-packed full of new features, including 60 of the 120 rooms had private bathrooms, and ice water was available on tap. thanks to a large refrigeration system that circulated chilled water to every room. No more bellhops running around with buckets of ice. And on top of that, the hotel was completely fireproof, which was a major selling point for a building of this scale in the 1920s.
The Kansas governor actually made the hotel his headquarters when Hutchinson hosted the 1924 State Democratic Convention.
And one of my favorite parts is this news article that we found where the owners presented the mayor with a giant golden key to the full hotel. Yeah, like an actual giant golden key, as kind of a symbolic gesture. And then the crowd gathered around in the flowered-covered lobby as Willie Malone officially opened the hotel while giving his speech to the mayor, saying,
"Honorable Mayor of Hutchinson, Mr. Buchanan and myself are proud of this moment, and I tender you this key to the Hotel Stamey. You are to keep this key until the first convention meets, and then you are to present it to the chairman of that convention with the instructions to pass it on to the following convention so that they may know that the Hotel Stamey will be their home and they will receive a warm welcome while in Hutchinson."
Key to the city.
Wow.
and we actually found two.
Something tells me one of those is it.
Yes.
The hotel opened at the perfect time because just a year later, the real treasure everyone had been hoping for was finally discovered: oil. And 1924 ended up being a busy year because oilmen flooded the city and filled every room, to the point where the owners even considered adding a sixth floor that would add 30 more rooms, but those plans never came to pass. In the years, the owners of the Hotel Stamey were locked in a gripping game of hot potato, and that included one owner who had dreamed of living in a hotel since he was a boy.
The owners that really caught my eye were the Goldstein sisters. Bessie Cohen had lost her husband, so she still went by Cohen, but Bessie and Molly were from Southeast Kansas, but actually moved up here, lived in the hotel on the 5th floor, and they're the ones that are really credited with making some pretty major changes, early changes in the hotel. The hotel lobby opened onto the coffee shop and the dining room expanded. That's when they renamed it to the Rose Room and redecorated the dining room. This door had openings in it that they enlarged, but these two beams and this ceiling are original.
The more I learn about this building, the more obvious it becomes why this building needs to be preserved. And anytime that I talk with somebody, one of the first things they tell me is that Harry Truman stayed here.
Oh, I got President Truman.
But that was long before he became president. In fact, he had just become the Jackson County judge, and he was passing through Hutchinson by rail. I'd seen the first page before, written on Hotel Stamey's official stationery, but it always felt incomplete. So we went to the National Archives and the Truman Library, where we found the full 6 pages and even the envelope. As it turns out, Truman had a long-running tradition of writing to his wife Bess, starting back as far as 1910, from hotels using their letterhead. But here, he wrote more. He did talk about missing his wife Bess and their newborn daughter, but then it shifts into vivid memories of World War I. This letter was written on November 11th, 1926, exactly 8 years after the armistice, the agreement that brought World War I to an end. During the war, he had served as a captain in the field artillery, leading Battle D of the 129th in France. His unit fired over 10,000 shells during the war, and in the letter, he describes firing artillery that very morning, and the eerie silence that followed. The uncertainty of whether the war was truly over, and not knowing if he was going to make it home. He even sketched what we believe is the formation from that day on the back of page 4. But in 1926, he was likely passing through Kansas on official county business, possibly studying roads or the rail systems. He mentioned stopping by Dodge City for dinner, then arriving in Hutchinson late that night, with the past still heavy on his mind.
As owners changed, the role of the hotel downtown changed, especially after the Goldstein sisters sold the hotel in 1939.
It was in that year that the new owners, Larry Beck and William Cross, took over. They were seasoned hoteliers who bought both the Stamey and the Zara Hotel in Great Bend at the same time. And for nearly 2 decades, they kept things moving forward, adding modern upgrades like air conditioning, a new dining room, and free parking. But by the 1950s, more travelers were choosing roadside motels, and downtown hotels like the Stamey were starting to feel the shift. That's when, in 1952, Cross and Beck were approached by acclaimed director Henry King, who was scouting locations for his next film, Wait Till the Sun Shines Nellie, starring Gene Peters, David Wayne, and Hugh Marlowe.
Wait till the sun shines, Nellie.
The movie shared the name of a popular 1905 song and follows the life of a family in Illinois between the 1890s and 1920s.
All of us have been through that movie so many times, and there's really two 1-second clips that give us some historic information that we don't have. And one of those is looking right here, and it's the railing on the mezzanine there that's gone.
Don't really know. George. Yes, Mr. Halpern. Put that in Senator Slocum's box, will you? Yes, sir.
And then you could clearly see all the paneling, that we knew was here.
In the film, the Hotel Stamey is called Sèvres, Illinois, and opens with a massive parade marching in front of the building. One of the most recognizable scenes was shot inside the hotel's real and operating barbershop at the time.
50 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, I bet it seems like only yesterday to you.
We even got in contact with somebody who was in the film and wanted to talk to us. Well, we think that's him.
They were formed up. The band was formed up right there. There was no marching. Actually, we may have walked from here to corner.
Nothing makes a man feel better than a good clean shave. Come on, Nellie. We got to start this parade.
Camera's over there, and I'm over here, and if you look quick, you can see my kneecap. I'm a trombone player on the front row.
Oh, okay.
But behind the fanfare, the times were changing, and downtown Hutchinson was starting to lose momentum. And the hotel was beginning to show its age. Cross and Beck hoped that the film would breathe new life into the Stamey. It was one of the last attempts to keep it relevant. But by 1957, they both saw the writing on the wall, and in that same year, they sold both the Stamey and the Zara and moved on to new ventures.
They used to have one of the best drug counters in the town.
Really?
That's where we went on dates and after sessions and stuff, made good milkshakes and all kinds of stuff.
The new owner, Menzo Hainline, rebranded the Hotel Stamey as the Landmark Apartments, saying there's usually a landmark in every town, and this building is just that. Over the next 2 decades, he gradually converted the upper floors into apartments while keeping the lower levels as hotel space until the renovation was complete. But just a few years later, Hainline sold the building to local real estate agent Terry Messing, and over the next 30 years, little was done to maintain it. Deferred maintenance piled up, and the once grand hotel slowly earned a different kind of reputation. After several attempts to make his money back and an last-ditch effort to sell, Messing put the building on eBay in the early 2000s. He listed it for a fraction of what it was originally built for, $130,000.
Yeah, this elevator is horrible. It always has been, I'm not even gonna lie. You never know if he was gonna make it sometimes. You just get in and hope for the best.
When digging through old Facebook posts and online reviews, it was clear that the Landmark's final years weren't exactly glamorous. And that's why I met with Selena Aganaga, the former manager.
I'm Selena.
Selena, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming down.
And her daughter, Ashley Pierce, who was in charge of maintenance.
Jesus, looks different.
Yes.
They both worked here until the day it closed.
Everybody was like a family. We would have
Fourth of July
parties together as a family here
Christmas,
with everybody in the building. We'd do Christmas dinners, we'd do Thanksgiving dinners. I mean, as a whole, we just did everything together.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to hear from their perspective how the building had changed over the years.
That is the old boiler system, and this is what he had upgraded it to. So as you can see, there's a giant difference.
Back in here, this is part of the boiler system, too.
All these valves,
we had to bleed.
we had to come and bleed on every single floor, which was kind of crazy because at the 5th floor, there was actually a hose that hung out the window that you attached, so that way you knew once the hot water had got all the way to the top floor, it would come out.
The Landmark was finally sold by Messings in 2014. The last 9 tenants were evicted, and plans to renovate the building were announced, but they never came. The building was left to rot. The top floors were riddled with water damage. In some areas, the original ceiling was caving in, and the only tenants left were the pigeons that had made themselves at home. Over the past decade, Hutchinson has lost several of its historic buildings.
We're out here at the former St. Elizabeth Hospital site.
All of them demolished for various reasons.
It just really wasn't a feasible option.
And for the landmark, the story was looking all too familiar. When the city's hands are tied, there's not much that can be done.
Really isn't the only building in town that we have in this condition, but it's probably the most, I guess, noticed building based upon its location and its history. We were hopeful that we would get something accomplished, at least in the time that I've been here, to get that building secured with new ownership, and it just hasn't happened.
The only way to rebuild density in downtowns is to make them places people actually want to live. And when that happens, the more services that are needed, the better opportunities for food and restaurants and entertainment.
Everyone was coming to terms with the fate of the landmark. And then, in 2023, someone on the city council finally shared the news.
One more thing I might share, and I have permission to share this, the landmark will have new owners within 30 days.
Historic landmark building in downtown Hutchinson finally breaking ground.
Now, one of the people backing the project says the nearly $14 million renovation will bring 36 new apartments right to downtown, all a part of the master plan years in the making.
Who was behind this? Because this news is kind of rare. In a time when so many historic buildings are left to rot or get torn down, seeing one actually get saved, that's why we tell these stories. It turns out it was a local resident, Laura Meyer-Dick, and I just knew that I had to sit down with her to understand why this building meant so much to her, how she's managing to save it, and what others might take away from her journey. Because if this place can be saved, maybe others can too. But one thing was clear, Laura had a story to tell.
Addressing a need while keeping the history of Hutch intact.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I am Laura Meyer-Dick, and my husband and I just bought the landmark.